Good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. We may have more people joining us as we go, since we're recording this and streaming this on YouTube. If you miss anything, can go back and watch it. So welcome everyone to the Building a Backyard Home in Charleston webinar. I'm Chloe Stuber. I'm a senior planner with the City of Charleston, and I have with me my colleagues Omar Mohammed in zoning, he's our zoning planner, Gianna Johnson, our director of housing and community development, and Michael Kiefer, construction program manager. This is a partnership between the Departments of Planning, Preservation, and Sustainability and the Departments of Housing and Community Development. And this is just the start of getting the word out about and helping to educate City of Charleston residents on how they can build backyard homes, also known as accessory dwelling units. So before we get started, I wanted to go over a few sort of key points and housekeeping items. So first, what is a backyard home? This is essentially just an accessory structure, such as a garage apartment, mother-in-law suite, a pool house, that can be used as a full-time residence. So Omar will be going more into detail about the requirements for this and what constitutes an accessory dwelling unit versus other types of accessory structures. But in the zoning ordinance, we do refer to these types of homes as accessory dwelling units or ADUs. And just in case anybody is here for learning how to build short-term rentals in their backyard, I'm sorry, but that is prohibited in the City of Charleston zoning ordinance. So you may not construct an ADU and use it for short-term rentals. So we do already have a restriction against that in the zoning code as written. A reminder to everyone, we are recording this webinar and we are also streaming this live on YouTube. So please be mindful of that. And also, this is a good resource for folks who cannot join tonight and go back and watch this later. If you do have questions during the presentation, we'll be holding those questions until the end. So we have a Q&A session at the end of this. If you think of a question during the presentation, you're welcome to submit it using the Q&A function, and we will make sure to address it at the end. And when we do get to the Q&A session, if you'd prefer to voice your question aloud, then you can use the raise hand function. And with that, I will pass it to Omar.
Thank you, Chloe. Good evening. My name is Omar Mohammed, and I am one of the zoning planners for the City of Charleston. And today I will be going over the zoning requirements for establishing an accessory dwelling unit on a lot here in the City of Charleston. So we have a couple of steps, a few steps that we highly recommend that people familiarize themselves with. This is a process that makes this approval easy. If any of these steps are skipped, you're gonna get frustrated with the process. So we highly recommend people follow the steps that are outlined. The first step, and this is just a summary, but I'm going to dive deeper into the steps as we go through the presentation. But the first step is submitting the accessory dwelling unit application. On that application is a checklist. So make sure that when you are filling out the application, you have everything on that checklist to complete your application for approval. One of the things, and this is the one that is overlooked a lot, is a site plan. I'm gonna go into specifics about what zoning department is looking for in a site plan. We also require a statement from the homeowner that specifies that there's no restrictions in the deed or the neighborhood or the HOA requirements that restrict an accessory dwelling unit from being established on a particular lot. And this statement has to be signed by the property owner, certifying that there is no covenants against establishing an ADU. And then there is a draft declaration of covenants and restrictions that is required as part of the establishing an accessory dwelling unit on your property. Step 2 is basically a simple application. This is a building permit application that needs to be filled out. and submitted along with your application to establish an accessory dwelling unit. And then the third step is, of course, that declaration of covenants and restriction needs to be recorded with the appropriate county register of deeds office. And you will not be issued your certificate of construction completion without the zoning department receiving that recorded, a copy of that recorded DCR. So I'm gonna go into the specifics here about what is a complete application when we are looking or reviewing an application to establish an accessory dwelling unit. So we just have a basic, simple form that is filled out, and mainly what we're looking for, again, of course, the owner and applicant's information, but specifically, we're looking for the site plan checklist. And I enhanced or enlarged this, and to the right there is the specific information that we're looking for that your site plan needs to contain. And I will go into detail and show exactly what we're looking for on a site plan, but we need that information there. Also, there is supplemental information that we need. We need the applicant's original signature on the application itself is a signature line that needs to be signed by the owner. The site plan containing the information above the site plan needs to contain all that information, and then the draft declaration of covenants and restrictions. This is an example of a site plan that we really and we tried to highlight some of the important information that tends to be omitted from site plans that we have to continuously reach out to folks about correcting. One is we need the site plan to be scaled. And what we mean by scaled is that there is a measurement that is used. For example, is given here 1 inch equals 20 feet. We need to know that because on your site plan, we will be checking if your accessory dwelling unit is 3 feet off a property line, 9 feet off a property line. We need to verify that. And in order for us to verify that, we need a scale. On your site plan, your property boundaries must be drawn on that site plan to determine where the boundaries are for your property. We need labor measurements, and these measurements must be in feet. Draw all existing buildings that are on the property, as well as the proposed addition or proposed accessory dwelling unit. We need to know the location of those buildings. Your site plan has to have a north arrow. This is very important for us to be able to determine if you're on the south side, west side. So it's important for us to be able to do that to make sure that you are meeting the zoning setback requirements. Driveway, we need to identify where the parking will exist on the property, because zoning requires that the primary structure has 1 parking, and the accessory dwelling unit has 2 parkings. I'm sorry. The primary structure has 2 parking spaces required, and the accessory dwelling unit has 1 parking space. So you have to be able to show us that 3 parking spaces can exist on your property. Identify any grantees, and by the ordinance, grantees are defined as any tree that are 24 inches or greater. And protected trees are 8 inches or greater. So we need those identified on your site plan. If there are sweet gums or pines, those are excluded. You do not need a permit to remove sweet gums or pines. On your site plan, also include your partial ID number. I'm old school, so we still refer to it as the TMS. So I did put that there, and then an example of what the TMS will look like. Address, the name of the property, name of your neighborhood, identify the public or private easements. This is really important. Any drainage or utilities or HOA or ingress, egress easements need to be identified on your property. Include your flood information. So that's going to be important as well in establishing these, because there may be some additional requirements that building inspections will need. Step 2 is just a basic application that needs to be filled out. Again, this is important because some of the information that is contained in this application, the City of Charleston is tracking. For example, if this is an affordable housing project, we are tracking those. So it's important that you check that so that we can begin to look at where affordable opportunities are in the city and track those. Also, being able to identify if you're in some like the Board of Architectural Review, we need that because that's some additional approval steps that may be needed. Also, if you are if the existing of other accessory structures exist on your property, or if you're planning to build in addition to the accessory dwelling unit, any other accessory structure, it's important for us to identify that because that's a different application and approval process. So we need to identify that early. And then if you plan to, like Chloe mentioned earlier, accessory dwelling units cannot be short-term rented, but we need that checked yes or no. So this again is a tractable form. Selection on your form that we want to track. As step 3 is the execution and recording of your declaration of covenants and restriction. This is an example of a very simple declaration of covenants and restrictions that the city provides as an example. And I've written down some of the necessary language that needs to be in the declaration. The one being that the principal dwelling unit or the accessory dwelling unit must be owner occupied in order for the accessory dwelling unit to be approved. There's no subleasing of the accessory dwelling unit. Occupancy of the accessory dwelling unit is limited to no more than 2 adults. And we define what adult means: any individual that is 18 years or older. Sorry about that, I hit the older. Under no circumstances can this property be converted to a horizontal property regime, like a condo. If you think about that, it's sort of like how a condo is arranged. Neither the principal dwelling unit or the accessory dwelling unit can be short-term rented. So that is prohibited. And then again, the covenant must be provided to the city as evidence that you have recorded it with the Registry of Deeds. And this is the last completed step. The final step is ensuring that you have a complete application. And this is an example, at least the layout of what we would consider as a complete ADU application or accessory dwelling unit application. The accessory dwelling unit application itself, a completed site plan that contains all of the information that we require on the site plan, the building permit application completely filled out, and then your declaration of covenants and restrictions. And that provides a complete application for us to be able to go through review. Thank you, Chloe.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I am Gianna Shaw Johnson. I am the director for the City of Charleston's Department of Housing and Community Development. And we want to share with you this evening information regarding the affordable component of the ADU program and the grant that the City of Charleston is willing to make available to those homeowners that want to pursue an ADU on their property. So of course, our goal here is to increase the availability and accessibility of affordable housing options in the city of Charleston. And later on in the slide, I will share with you what affordable means in this context. So let me share about the grant program first, because many are interested in that. 10 homeowners will be selected via application submittals to receive $20,000 each to support the development of an affordable ADU on their property. Homeowners selected will need to demonstrate the selection of a low to moderate income resident who will rent from them based on the prescribed guidelines, income guidelines that we will share with you later. The selection of residents should be completed in compliance with the Fair Housing Act. The grant funding stipulations, funding must be used for construction activities necessary to construct and or convert an existing structure to meet ADU requirements. And the grant funding will be issued as a reimbursement. Homeowners will be asked to submit invoices and supporting documentation to the Department of Housing and Community Development for the release of funds. So affordable rental requirements under the ADU ordinance. Affordable means those who earn 80% of the area median income or less, if you determine you want to rent to someone who earns less than 80%. A single person household earning 80% of the area median income earns about $51,450 a year. An affordable rental rate, this means what you can rent an ADU for a person who earns that amount of income, is $1,286 per month. These figures are established by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and they change on an annual basis, usually in the first to second quarter of each year. Our compliance requirements related to the affordable ADU rentals, they will have restrictive covenants documenting, very similar to the other restrictive covenants, but these will share information relative to who you're renting to. And then we must verify the renter's income and rent level on an annual basis, basically making sure that you are renting at the appropriate level based on those guidelines that we shared with you previously. We will have a team member within the Department of Housing and Community Development that will confirm, if you will, what those incomes are on an annual basis. So we shared with you a few moments ago information regarding what incomes look like for those persons that earn 80% of the area median income. And it is illustrated on this chart that you see before you. A one-person household earning 80% of the area median income is $51,450. A household of two earning 80% of the area median income, the income is $58,880. And just so you fully understand, the area median income for the city of Charleston is $91,800. That is based on a family of four earning 100% of the area median income. So that gives you a sense, of course, of what the incomes are for those who would possibly rent from you under the affordable component of the ADU program. Next slide, Chloe. And so another chart we thought was important for you to understand is what the rent amounts are. So a one-bedroom household, you can rent that for $1,286 and actually 25 cents. We left the quarter off there on that one. A two-bedroom for someone at 80% of the area median income is $1,472. And in my estimation, because it is an ADU, you are restricted on the size of the ADU. The likelihood is that you would not be able to exceed a 2-bedroom unit. Usually when we're referring to rental incomes or household incomes, if you will, usually that rent amount does not exceed 30% of that person's annual income, just to give you a tad bit more information with regard to what those rental rates look like. Thank you. Next slide. Michael Kiefer will share with you about what it looks like to plan your project. Mike, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Kiefer. I'm the Construction Program Manager at the city's Department of Housing and Community Development. The way that we go about starting our building projects, first we contract with a surveyor to get a boundary survey and spot elevations if the property is located in a flood zone. The surveys will indicate the flood zone designation, and the required first floor elevated height of the house can be determined with the survey. Surveyor sends a CAD version of the survey to the architect, and he develops the site plan. An architect determines the building's footprint based on the height requirement of the structure and the floor plan that is established. He places the building footprint onto the survey and creates the site plan for us. And architects typically have structural engineer contacts and preferences that they use for developing their plans. An environmental engineer performs geotechnical exploration drilling and soil sampling at the building footprint location. Geotechnical explorations are not building code requirement, but they are very strongly suggested. The environmental engineer will mobilize drilling equipment onto the property, and that would usually require about an 8-foot width for entry. The geotechnical exploration report determines the stability of the soils, the bearing capacity, and the forecasted earthquake resistance for the structure, and also recommends types and sizing of foundation footings and recommends site preparation methods. A building contractor can help to identify challenges that are specific to the project and can help with the recommendations to help to plan within a budget. Both the architect and the building contractor know the current building codes. Proximity of the ADU to the primary structure and the lot lines will dictate fire protection building code materials requirements and also limitations as to number of windows allowed on a particular elevation of a house. Also, the building contractor will need to coordinate acceptable sewer and water connections with Charleston water systems. Impact and connection fees will mostly apply, and special requirements apply for state DOT-owned streets. And that's about all I have to get it started.
All right, thank you, everyone. And this is written on the slide, but we do have some sample costs here just to help folks think through these ballpark estimates. This is a sample cost. This is, this will vary by project where it's located, if there are issues, if there are trees or not, flood zone or not. So it's going to vary by project. It's also, if you're doing a conversion versus new construction, the cost would look different. And if you're working with any sort of stock plans, that may reduce your architectural costs as well. So, there's lots of variation here. This is just to give folks a sense of what all is involved and what to expect. Okay, so now we will move into the Q&A version point of the webinar. And I will go ahead and address out loud a question that was asked early on in the webinar, which was about where ADUs are permitted in the city of Charleston. And they are, as of 2020, allowed in all base zoning districts across the city of Charleston. So that is not specific to one zoning district or another. They're allowed in all base zoning districts. However, I did get a call yesterday with someone asking about this. If your neighborhood has an HOA, we advise that you check with your HOA. There may be restrictive covenants in your neighborhood prohibiting construction of an ADU. So that is something that would take precedent in this case over whatever the base zoning allows for that neighborhood. Omar, do you have anything to add to that question?
No, you answered that question incorrectly. Yep.
Okay. Didn't realize I had that old slide up. Okay. The next question is for Gianna. Is there a minimum amount of time that the grant awardees must adhere to the affordability requirements, or is that for the life of the property?
It is for 30 years, the affordability period. And so the individual that secures the grant and provides that unit or constructs or rehabilitates, creates the ADU unit, have to comply with a 30-year affordability period.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is from Millicent Brown. Will the 10 recipients be spread throughout the city's boundaries so that all parts of the city get a fair chance to participate?
It will not. It will be based on the individuals that first comply with the zoning requirements related to this ADU function, and then who is able to complete the application related to the affordable ADU component. And I would just say we will have that information available by the end of the week on the website. It's a very simple application. Some of the same things that are required under the zoning application is required for the affordable program. And so some of it you would have answered once you provide the information related to the zoning portion, but we will have that information available to you soon. Our goal is to comply with those who are submitting their applications as soon as they can in relation to the requirements. Thank you.
And I'm going to add on to that question, Gianna. I know this is a round of funding for this. Do you hope to be able to host more rounds of this program in the future? I know it's funding dependent, but
yeah, we always hope to provide additional funding. We're looking at that to determine if that's feasible. Thank you, Chloe.
Okay, the next question is from Ronald Sassard. I hope I pronounced that correctly. What are the setback requirements for an ADU? I think this goes to Omar.
Chloe, did he hear you?
I think, Omar, are you frozen? Or I think Omar may be frozen. So I'm going to go to the next. Oh, Omar. Oh, I saw him move. We're going to wait for Omar to get back and go to the next question. Okay, this question is from Madeline Froome. This is saying that she has a property in the east side of Charleston, wondering if an ADU can be constructed there. The property does comply, but did not know about the neighborhood and how to find out. From what I understand, the east side does not have an HOA, and I'm not familiar with any restrictive covenants prohibiting ADUs on the east side of Charleston. And Omar, we got you. Do we have you back?
Yes.
Okay. So did you hear the question, or do you need me to repeat it?
I did not. Can you repeat it for me,
Okay.
please?
Yes, the question was, what are the setback requirements for an ADU?
So it depends on the base zoning for the subject property. So you can definitely follow up with the zoning department and we can help you identify your base zoning and provide you the required setback requirements. If your accessory dwelling unit applies the special exception to the setbacks, that is being 3 feet off the rear, 3 feet off the side, your accessory dwelling unit square footage is capped at 600 square feet.
And that is the 600 square feet is for the footprint of the building.
That is correct.
So it could technically be the interior conditioned space could be more than that, up to the maximum that the accessory dwelling unit allows, as long as the footprint is 600 square feet or less. Okay. Okay, the next question is from Harriet Revis. What is the maximum size allowed for an ADU?
Yep. Again, that size is based on if you if your accessory dwelling unit meets the required setback requirements on your property, you're limited to 850 square feet of a footprint of a building. Again, if you apply the special exception to your accessory dwelling unit, where it's 3 feet off the rear, three feet off the side, that footprint is capped at 600 square feet.
And I think the overall cap for ADUs, just generally speaking, if you're not using the exception, can go up to 850 square feet of conditioned floor area.
That is correct.
Okay, the next question is Jamal. I apologize if I mispronounce your last name, Jamal Olusesi. And the question is, can an ADR be used for an Airbnb or other type of rental? I can go ahead and answer this. No, it cannot. So sorry, other type of rental, yes. So a long-term rental, yes. A short-term rental, such as a vacation rental or Airbnb, no. Okay, the next question again from Madeline, is this property an economic development area? Is it not? I am not sure I'm not sure what that question means. Madeline, if you're able to, I'm going to unmute you. If you can ask your question out loud, that would be helpful.
So Chloe, she may be referring to maybe some overlay district that is encouraging economic development. Maybe if she could provide some clarity around what she means about economic development area. I'm not for sure if she's referencing some type of overlay.
I'm not sure either. I'm not familiar with anything called that in particular. So Madeline, I have given you the ability to unmute yourself. If you're able to ask your question out loud or clarify, that would be helpful. Okay, while we're waiting for her to unmute, I'll go to the next question. This is from Ann Walker. Do they check credit and debt to income ratio like applying for a mortgage? Gianna, can you take this?
So we do not check in this case because these are grant dollars. We do not check credit or debt to income ratio to determine your ability to afford it. Because we understand and recognize that if you are building an ADU, you will need money in order to do that. So you will have to either have that money or pursue that funding from a financial institution. And the funding that we will provide will be on a reimbursement basis, which means you already secured the amount of money to build the ADU. And then the funds that we provide, the grant funds that we will provide, will be provided to you later on in the project, once the project is completed. So it's a reimbursement grant. You would have already secured your funding, expended your dollars, and then we will provide the grant with evidence or documentation of the funds that were expended.
Yes, and I'm assuming if you, for that additional financing, if you're going to a bank to get that financing, then we can't speak directly to what the bank will ask for, but typically for, for a loan, they will be checking those things.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Madeline,
Can you
I
hear
believe
me?
you came off mute. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. No, what I was asking is that parts of Charleston, especially, I don't know, starting in the east side, there is an added incentive from a tax point of view to invest. So it's an economic development type of tax incentive. I just was wondering if the east side also is part of that. Because I know part of the neck is and part of Morrison Avenue and all that sort of thing.
Yes, I understand now. I think you're what you're referring to is the opportunity zone.
Yes,
And
that's it.
I can't remember the exact how far it goes down on the peninsula, but I do think it includes much of the east side. Omar, I know you've done research on that. How much of the east side is included in the opportunity zone?
Yeah, it does. It includes the east side, and how they chose areas to participate in opportunity zone was based on low wealth criteria. That areas that met those criteria were selected to participate in the opportunity zone. And I believe the last map that I looked at, the east side was included in that area.
Oh, okay.
That's correct, Omar. The east side is included.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if construction of a single ADU would necessarily be able to take advantage of the tax credit benefits through the opportunity zone, but that's a really interesting question, and I think something worth us looking into more. So thank you for asking.
Thank you. I also wanted to, can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go for it. We have time.
Yeah. Okay. You were talking about long-term and vacation. What is considered long-term versus vacation? Because if someone can come for a vacation like for 3 months or 4 months, whatever, that be considered long-term?
Right. So the ordinance defines short-term rental as rental that is between 1 day and 29 days. Anything 30 days and above is considered long-term rental.
Oh, okay, great. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those questions. The next question is again from Jamal. What is the biggest hurdle to building an ADU from your experience?
From
this.
Yeah, sure. From zoning perspective, it is definitely meeting the requirements to establish the accessory dwelling unit on your property. That could be meeting the setback requirements, meeting the height requirement, also meeting the footprint requirement that is necessary. And one of the biggest hurdles that we find people not meeting the residency requirement, being an owner-occupied property. That is the biggest hurdle that we find. And also meeting that parking requirement. There's 3 parking spaces that you have to show can be on site. It cannot be 2 parking spaces on the street, one down the street, one at my neighbor's house. It has to be on the subject property. You have to be able to show that 3 parking spaces can fit on that subject property. So that is another challenge.
Michael, do you have anything to add to this as being someone who's managed many construction projects and maybe not an ADU, but anything that you think can relate to this question?
Are you referring to the height or story amount limitations question?
Just what's the biggest hurdle for building an ADU from your experience? And you're on mute.
I would think it would have to do with the lot coverage and setback requirements would be the biggest challenges.
And Chloe, I would simply add to that the audience and the public should be aware that construction costs are a bit higher now than they've been in the past. And we've noticed that before COVID-19 certainly, but since that time, due to the supply chain issues, there have been higher costs than we've normally seen. We've seen some leveling out, if you will, on some construction supplies, and others we've seen higher amounts. So those who are interested in doing this should understand that this is a financial commitment upfront that they will make. If managed appropriately, certainly they could see a return later on or soon after securing an ADU, but it will require an investment upfront. On Mike's slide, he referenced a general or an average amount per square foot cost. And so residents should look closely and certainly be in contact with their banker or their accountant relative to what those costs look like, so that they understand fully before they jump in what those anticipated costs will be as they pursue an ADU.
We have another question, and this is, I think, to Omar. So are there any height or story amount limitations for an ADU?
Yes, again, that is depends on the zoning requirements, base zoning requirement. But the accessory dwelling unit cannot exceed the height of the primary unit on the lot. So if it's 1 story, the accessory dwelling unit can be 1 story. If it's 2 stories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
The next question, what is the minimum size allowed for an ADU? And sort of thinking about tiny houses.
Yeah, so I mean, if it's an accessory structure with livable space, conditioned space, we don't have a minimum size requirement for a livable space. I will have to think about that question a little bit. But in the zoning ordinance, it does not address a minimum footprint for a building to be approved. But I will definitely check on that just to make sure that I'm not overlooking something.
That's what I remember as well, Omar. And I actually have the ordinance pulled up just for reference as we're going through these questions, and I don't see anything establishing a minimum. So that, there may be a point that's too small to meet other requirements, but
Right.
No established minimum.
That's right.
So another question from Rashonda: if a homeowner already operates a short-term rental, will they have to surrender their licenses before building an ADU? And if so, at what point in the process must the short-term rental activity cease? Upon application or closer to completion and certification of occupancy?
So zoning staff will not approve any accessory dwelling unit if there's the potential for it to be short-term rented. We will have to have some, if someone is operating a short-term rental unit and looking to establish it as an accessory dwelling unit, they need to have conversations with the zoning staff to make sure that we are approving this in the appropriate manner. We want to have some very detailed conversations with the applicant to ensure that the applicant understands what we can approve, what we can't approve, what would be required. So I will ask that the person who asked that question to follow up with zoning, and we'll be glad to sit down with you in a more sit down with you and have a detailed conversation about that question.
And this actually, I'm going to skip down to another question that actually relates to this. So can one schedule an office visit with your staff for further discussion and elaboration before proceeding with an application? Actually,
we highly recommend that anyone that is looking to do anything, really any type of permitting that requires review, to sit down with staff and have conversations, because there may be other things that other people we need to pull into the conversation. So we highly suggest that folks reach out to city staff and have a conversation before you start having this upfront investment into a lot of what will be required. So yes, please reach out to us to have a conversation.
Okay, this next question from Edith Miller is says our lot is West Ashley in a zoned limited business. We want to build several houses on our lot. Is there a mandatory lot size for each home?
Yes, so not mandatory size, but this is going to be the challenge, right? If you're looking to establish an accessory dwelling unit, you're going to be limited to 2. So it's one primary structure and one accessory dwelling unit on any lot, regardless of what the base zoning is. I think what she perhaps may be asking is what is the buildable lot size that is required, and each base zoning has a buildable lot size that is required to build a if it's a single family structure, if it's a multifamily structure, if it's a duplex, there is a certain square footage that is a minimal requirement to do that. So I would ask the person that asked that question, again, follow up with staff, and we will be able to help you specifically for the address that you're concerned about or inquiring about. We can help you answer that question specifically to that address that you are inquiring about.
Follow-up question. If someone has a 2-car garage and a driveway, would that allow them to have an ADU?
Again, it all depends on height restrictions. You can convert a garage to an accessory dwelling unit. Again, I highly recommend folks to reach out to zoning staff so that we can look at what it is that you're planning to do and give you guidance on how to proceed. But yes, a garage can be converted to an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, question from Ann Walker. Baby boomers, Gen Xers are in need of assisted living or affordable places to live due to their age. Can the ADU be used for this purpose?
Yes, it's a livable space, and you can have an accessory dwelling unit accommodate different lifestyles, different housing needs. Yes.
And I see that part of the question is about, affordable places to live. So I think certainly age is not looked at on the application for the affordable home, just income. So, if someone's on a fixed income, saving retirement at this point, then that would be looked at in terms of verifying their income. Is that correct, Gianna?
That's correct. Thank you.
A next question, can you elaborate on the criteria from an owner occupied perspective? So what is the criteria for owner occupied?
From a zoning perspective, what we're looking at is that the county assess properties, and based on that assessment, there's a document that is provided to us. If you pay 4% on your property, you are owner occupied lot. If you pay 6%, you are not an owner occupied lot, and that is what we base owner occupied. That's how we determine if a lot is owner occupied through the tax assessment.
Okay, and how does one schedule a meeting with zoning or other staff at the city?
Yep. So I can drop in our contact information in chat, and you can follow up with any of the zoning staff. You can find our contact information on the website as well. And any zoning staff will be able to point you to the appropriate person to help you answer any questions that you have.
I also highly recommend folks who are able to get downtown during the permit center hours. It's a great way to meet with staff and get answers to your questions quickly. Sometimes inboxes can get really busy or staff aren't at the desk and aren't able to answer the phone immediately. So the permit center is a great way to get immediate access to zoning staff. And Omar, can you help me with stating the permit center hours?
Yeah, permit center hours is Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 2.
Oh, and that is located at 2 George Street. So
George Street.
Where the Gilliard Center is downtown, 2 George Street, first floor. And next question, if we are approved for the grant, build the ADU, et cetera, what happens if we sell our home and move away? This is for Gianna.
Excellent question. And you know, the rules do cover that. I need to look at those rules and determine what the requirement is. I believe that normally we ask that the successor, meaning the person who acquires the property from you, continues to rent the ADU under the affordable program, but I need to make sure I clarify that. And certainly if you can reach out via email or otherwise to our department, we can respond accordingly and give you a definitive answer to that.
Right, the next question, this is a clarification question, so my apologies to Mal for misinterpreting your first question. The question was in reference to the two-car garage and driveway. The question was about if that would meet the parking requirements.
I'm gonna have to think about that question, Chloe, to be honest with you, and look at how the ordinance refers to the parking requirements for accessory dwelling units, and I can contact you to be able to reach out to Jamal and answer that question appropriately.
Yeah, I from my understanding, I think this would be depending on the site, depending on that particular address. Just like of a lot of the other questions, the theme of the night is it's going to depend on where you're located, if there's street parking, if you have ample parking for folks in the house. And so it's just going to vary. And the requirement for ADUs is just as long as there's one parking spot specifically for the ADU resident. You'd have to be able to demonstrate that. Next question is from Millicent Brown. Are there requirements for internal features, all major appliances, one bathroom, etc.?
Yeah, so primarily what zoning is looking for on the floor plan is the presence of a kitchen, because that is what is going to determine if this is an accessory dwelling unit or an accessory structure. So in the zoning ordinance, a dwelling unit is defined by conditioned space that includes a kitchen with a traditional stove. So the absence of that stove is by zoning, we would consider that an accessory structure. So again, it could be very confusing. We ask people to reach out to us so we can have these conversations and clear up any potential for misunderstanding. What are the requirements? Building inspection may have some different requirements, again, about what needs to happen internally, because they have purview over internal configurations of living structures. So again, reach out to city staff so that we can appoint you to the appropriate department to answer these types of questions.
The next question is if what happens in areas like Lincolnville, which is technically part of Charleston County, and no one will answer questions. You're sent back and forth between two cities. So I'm sorry to hear that and understand your frustration. Unfortunately, the ordinance that we're discussing tonight and the requirements and allowances are only pertain to the City of Charleston zoning ordinance, and so only pertain to parcels or properties that are within the City of Charleston corporate limits. So we do not have purview over anywhere else, and our zoning ordinance does not apply anywhere outside of the City of Charleston city limits. So I don't know that we'd be able to be much assistance to you in terms of getting responses for your property if it is not located within the city of Charleston. Last question, at least that I see for now, is can you repay a prorated amount of the grant back if the home is sold and the new owner does not want to take over the program?
Possibly, but as I shared earlier, what I would like to do is confer with the regulations governing the program. Ideally, we always want money back as we can then reuse it for other programs and other purposes. But I'd like to define more clearly what the requirement is and then communicate that out via our website or otherwise so that there is complete clarity regarding that question and that ruling. Thank you.
Okay, I am seeing no more questions. So with that, we will wrap up the webinar. This is the website, the webpage where we will be keeping any new information and updates about the ADU ordinance requirements process to get approval for an ADU, information about the grant program that Gianna has been sharing about, any other resources we pull together, we will be putting on this page. So save this link. Also, I just want to emphasize the permit center as being a great first step. So first start with just understanding, can your property, is it feasible on your property? And that's going to be starting with zoning staff. And then once you get a better understanding of the ability to, just in terms of zoning requirements, ability to build an ADU on your property, if you're interested in the grant program, then we can assist you with getting in touch with housing staff and beginning that conversation as well. So this is a really important part of the City of Charleston's strategy to increase the amount of housing throughout the city. And so we really want to be available to anyone who is interested in being an ADU. We would really like to see more ADUs throughout the city. So we really encourage folks to take advantage of that and please be in touch and come to us with your questions. Does anybody else, any other panelists want to share remarks before we close?
No, thank you, Chloe, Omar. Thank you, Michael, Kiefer, and everyone for their participation, and certainly residents of the City of Charleston for the excellent questions that they posed.
Great. Thanks, everyone, and have a great night.
You too.
Good
Bye-bye.
night, everyone.